Hello everyone, thank you for coming. This session is Declarative Configuration of Share, also known as all about the Aikau framework. My name is Dave Draper. I'm a senior software engineer at Alfresco. I've worked for Alfresco for about the last 4 years, primarily in the UI team, working with Surf and most recently architecting the Aikau framework. So one of the key things I want to do today, or not do today, is go over too much old ground. So if you've been at previous summits or DevCons, last year I did a session called Share Page Creation Live, which is still up on YouTube, which was followed by the Share Widget Library. And these were really all about Aikau before we gave it its name. And for those of you who are interested, Aikau is named after a very famous surfer because we wanted to kind of reclaim the association with surf, which is something I think we're rightly proud of, despite a slightly checkered history. I should say as well, this always comes up, Surf is now officially back in the Alfresco SVN, so we have now back full control over it and we have much more flexibility about how we take it forwards. I also did a session, a Tech Talk Live, which again was about Aikau, and I've been doing a lot of blogs. Most recently, over the last sort of 10 days or so, I think I've done 10 mini examples because I know there's been a lot of feedback on Twitter that we need more documentation, and I'm going to try to continue to provide more blogs and examples of how to use this because I know it's all a bit new and a bit different, and people are keen to get information, and we're very keen to get it out there for you to have. So there are plenty of links which you can go and watch, so if I go over anything that you don't necessarily understand, then please go back and review previous sessions, read the blog posts. All of the slide deck is on the Summit website now, as is the videos of all the demos I'm going to show. So if you're struggling to see any of the demos from the back of the room because of the resolution or whatever, then please download them later or now and follow along. So, as I said, we're going to be talking about Aikau. So what is Aikau? I think when we sort of get briefed on doing these sessions, one of the key things people tell us about is try to get a message across, there has to be a point to the session. And I think if there's a message about what I'm going to talk about today, it's really to make sure you understand exactly the level that Aikau is being pitched at. This is not a competing JavaScript framework. Do not think of this as an alternative to jQuery or Angular or web components or anything like that. It's a level above that. We're trying to provide a way in which you can declare pages and make the sort of future-proofing ourselves against changes in frameworks. So the idea being is that when you write a page or you declare a page in Aikau, that even though it's been done, as technology moves forward, as we continue to improve and rework our widgets, we will bring those pages along. So that's the key message I want to get across about what Aikau is all about. So I think the goals of Aikau really are more or less common sense. I don't think anything we're trying to do is particularly novel. So we want to simplify development. This is feedback we've had about Share for a long time. I've talked about this at length, the complexities of having to create all these different surf objects. It's too hard to build pages in Share. And also, we want to simplify customization. Again, Share is very different from other applications in that we sort of present Share as a starting point, and it's, the community and business partners are able to take Share and work with it and turn it into whatever they want. And I think that's different from many other applications. And so one of the key goals of Aikau is to make this possible and make it easier. We've always been able to do it, starting with copy and pasting web scripts, improving the extensibility model, and I think this is the final step in that journey to being able to do easy customization. And it's not just about development and customization for ourselves, but it's also for the community and the partners. And one of the key things, again, this isn't anything incredibly new. We want to maximize code reuse. In the past, we've been guilty, as probably everyone has, of copy pasting codes to make to make small changes. Now we want to really get into this habit of dry. Do not repeat yourself. Write something once and reuse it. And then the nice thing about this is it allows us to go back and iterate and expand on what we've done, but always reusing the code which we've already written. And we want to improve the consistency. So if you look at Share as an application, it's been around for 5-6 years now. As you navigate through it, you'll sort of recognize that it changes, and these changes are sort of in terms of the the user interface, both the design and the behaviour. And a lot of this comes down to the fact that it's been different developers or developers who've gained new skills or changed the way they do things, and it's evolved. Whereas what we actually want to do is provide an application which is consistent. Now obviously Share isn't there at the moment, it's not there, certainly there for 5.0, but by adopting this strategy we can define these pages, and then we can ensure by reusing widgets that they maintain consistency throughout the application. And finally, we just want to make the code good, we want to make it robust, and to do that we need unit tests. Now I don't think any of these are particularly novel concepts, it's just good practice. So this is what we're trying to get to. So having worked on it for a while, these are kind of the key features that have sort of fallen out of it. Accessibility, I suppose you could argue that's a goal as well. Alfresco sells into government mandates accessibility compliance, so we're trying to make sure all of the widgets we write, all of the pages we write are compliant with accessibility guidelines, and in particular we're sort of at the moment leaning towards the WAI ARIA compliance, and we've done a lot of work for 5.0 on the new pages to make sure they are compliant. We've got this notion of zero build. Because we have this dynamic extensibility model, we want people to be able to provide JavaScript and CSS and have it automatically aggregated and reduce the number of HTTP requests to overall improve performance, because obviously that can only be a good thing. We want the application to perform better. And we, again, as part of this, we only want browsers to load data when required. We do this by stamping our resources with MD5 checksums. And all of this is, and that prevents the stale browser caching. And all of this has been discussed in greater depth at last year's session, so I'm not going to go into too much about that. We want to support theming going forwards. This is something that has been perhaps a little bit neglected, but we are embedding less CSS pre-processing to dynamically apply themes to widgets. And again, this extensibility customization story is key to Alfresco and key to Share, and it's something which is one of the main features of using the Aikau framework. And we need to, and this is one of the key things that comes up is people are like, oh, why don't you rewrite Share? Why don't you do this? It's like, well, because Share's really, really big, and you'd be surprised at how big it is as you sort of dive into the code. We're dragging a lot of legacy with us, and we need to be able to work with that legacy. But at the same time, we need to have something that we can use for other projects. And so that, again, is one of the key benefits. And as I wasn't here this morning, actually, for the keynote, but I understand Doug, I followed it all on Twitter. Doug has been talking about how we want to embrace the community more. And Aikau is set up in such a way that it allows third-party contributions to be accepted more readily because of the way in which the widgets provide a sort of sandboxing development environment for you to use. So it all comes down to this declarative approach, this ability to define a JSON model which represents a page. And this model contains widgets and services. So a widget is probably a familiar term. We talk about a service as being something that lives on the client, that acts as an interface between the widget and the back-end data to allow us to decouple our presentation from the data so we can use widgets with a variety of different data sources. And we're allowed to use these models either being defined in a Share web script, or we can actually store them directly onto the repository and read them back from the repository dynamically. And again, in the Share Customization Live or Share Page Creation Live session, I went into that in great depth if you want to go back and view that. And because the models are not evaluated, this means that we can allow people to create their own pages safely, because it's just not possible for them to insert malicious code. They're just reusing our own widgets in a way in which they want to use them. So where are we using Aikau at the moment? This is still relatively new. The whole of Share hasn't been replaced. There's a new sites manager, which you may have seen. We've got this new filtered search, which hopefully you saw in the keynote and in Mike and Andy's session just before lunch. The search manager, and also the header since 4.2 was written in Aikau, and there's also a page creator tool, and there's a prototype document library, the lib files for generating those, which are available for you to use. So we've got lots of existing examples of us using it, and there will continue to be more as we go forwards. So one of the key thing, okay, I keep saying key, I'm overusing a term there. The granularity of widgets is important. So previously we had the legacy Share widgets they were very large, and they performed multiple functions. If you think about something like the document list, it's very big, very hard to easily reuse, very hard to customize, and there are lots of examples where you sort of wanted something that was similar, and we ended up copying and pasting it, and it's just not a good approach to take. And there was no unit test for them. If you went to pick up a third-party toolkit like a jQuery UI or a Dojo or something like that, or UE, you get very abstract, very small widgets, and you end up sort of, as you decide how you want to use them, you end up sort of writing this boilerplate code which you continue to reuse. And that's effectively what Aikau is, because Aikau is not by any means, people say, oh, I've seen things on comments on Twitter saying, well, no one else is going to use it. Well, that's fine. We don't expect anyone else to use it. Aikau is geared up for Alfresco. It is styled around Alfresco. It's for building clients for Alfresco. So that allows us to define the style we want, which you can't just do in a third-party widget. And so our widgets, they're still very fine-grained, but they have a specific function, and they are intentionally designed to be reusable and extendable, and they're hierarchically built, which means that we both extend our own widgets, and our widgets are written in such a way that if you like one of our widgets but it's not quite what you want, you can extend it very easily and just override the bits that you want. You don't have to copy and paste large chunks of code. The functions are intentionally small. You can extend or replace them, and in most cases they're written to be configured for use how you want to use them. So everything has been written with third-party customization in mind. And they're all unit tested, and also in this extensibility and configuration model, you can very easily swap things about. So, for example, and it's one of the powerful things I've found about this. When we used to write UI code in Share, frequently we'd do something, you spend a lot of time working on something, and the product owner would come along and say, oh, that's good, but can we change that? Can I do that? And you'd sort of sigh and go, oh, it's going to be a load of work. But now it's very easy just to sort of swap things in and out to change the behavior, for example, and also to sort of almost, if you like, start to sketch out your application and then know that you're going to fill in the details later. For example, when we were working on the filtered search page, the actual search box was just a text box for a long time, and then we wanted to come back and add in the ability to do the autocomplete. It was literally just a case of swapping out one line of code to switch the widgets and add a couple of lines of config that was specific to doing the auto-suggest. It wasn't difficult, and we've been able to just chop and change things really easily during the development of these pages. But to give you a visual example of what it looks like, this is the existing document library, and the red boxes mark out where a widget is on that page, or a legacy widget. And this actually is an old slide, but this is an example of the prototype document library in Aikau, and you can very easily see how there's much more widgets on the page. So each of these red boxes could be reconfigured, pulled out, changed around, moved around. It's much more flexible. If you wanted to change things in the existing document list views, it would be very, very difficult. We've got over 300 modules so far. These comprise the sort of base widgets, which can be extended. We've got composite widgets, because again, a widget itself can just reference, it could be like a mini model in itself of widgets to reuse. So you can sort of, we use this with views quite a bit in the search and the document library. Sort of, we build the model of what we want, and then we can sort of rubber stamp it into its own widget. But all it's doing again is referencing widgets that have been previously written. And we have these services which allow the widgets to communicate with a data model. And we also have utilities for just working with, and we can either mix them in or just reference them to do very common functions that aren't necessarily tied into the hierarchy of that particular widget. So here's an example of what we're talking about. So if you imagine a form control, a very basic form control, a text box. If you wanted to pick up a text box from any third-party widget library, this is what you're going to get. You are just going to get a text box. Maybe you have the option to put in some placeholder text. But what we actually want to do is any time you use a form control, normally you want to have a label, you want to have a description, maybe you want some units, maybe you want some validation, all of these things. But if you're writing an application, you know that style, you know the behavior. And so this is the kind of wrapping that Aikau is providing. And this form control in the middle, I mean, the form control is a very good example. It could be anything. We've written it in such a way that we're wrapping UE controls, jQuery controls, Dojo controls. It really doesn't matter. We don't care. We just want to make it referenceable in this JSON model. And this goes back to the story of UX consistency. So if you change a widget, any page that uses that widget is going to see the updates regardless of when it was written. And if you change a widget which other widgets inherit from, they are also going to see the benefits. So we can make a one-line change and have it make pervasive changes across the entire application. So as an example of this, we did have, this is up until a while ago. This is what the search manager dialog looked like, the form in it, and it's kind of subtle, but I think it was Kev said, I don't like that. It's like, let's change it, let's move a few things around. So what we ended up doing is we sort of knocked back the description text, we changed where the requirement indicator was, we just did lots of little things, but it was all in this one base form control class. Changes went everywhere, took no time at all. Every single page that we'd made, we'd used those widgets on, saw the benefit. We were pulling the entire application along with us with those changes. In order to support this notion of having these widgets, we need to decouple them. We want people to be able to sort of swap in and out widgets. So we need to remove any fixed references between them, and we do this by using a pub-sub mechanism. So what we do is widgets can subscribe and publish on specific topics, and a topic can be scoped to prevent crosstalk. So in this model, a widget might have lots of child widgets. It will automatically inherit the pub-sub scope of its parent, or it can request to have a new one generated. It has access to its parent scope, and it always has access to the global scope. So this gives you quite a powerful model in which to communicate with other widgets. And again, because of the way we've written this, everything goes through a single set of pub-sub APIs, and at the moment we're reusing the Dojo pub-sub model. But because they all go through our own API, which is in a core widget, if we wanted to swap that out for some other thing, like for example, the Dojo pub-sub doesn't support globbing, if we wanted to use something else, we just swap it out in that one place. Every widget sees the benefit. And this is the kind of model we're trying to get towards. So here's an example of the pub-sub stuff. I apologise, this one didn't come out very well, but basically drag and drop creating a form. This seems to be all the rage at the moment. So this is the page creator, slightly old. This version looks a bit newer. Again, I apologise, this isn't showing up very well. So this is showing us creating a form. So we've dropped a form into our palette, and now we're going to create a checkbox, and this checkbox is going to be for showing and hiding a particular field. So here you can see down here I'm entering a label, entering a description, and I can just build up all of the actual the values that I want. This whole form, this page creator, I should say, was entirely written in Aikau as well, just to show you the sort of complexity of things you can build. So again, like I said, I apologise, you can't see it very well. This is a form, and inside we've dropped both a checkbox, and now we've dropped a text box. And that text box, we are giving it a label, and it's going to be an email address. Now the key bits coming up here is that we're going to dynamically or declaratively define visibility behaviour, because one of the common use cases is, as you're building a form, is that you want people to say, if this is true, this is hidden, or this is required, or this becomes disabled in certain context. So here we click on this button, we say, I want to set up a visibility rule. If the show name field, which was the checkbox, is set to true, then we are going to be visible. And so I also set some validation rules to say that's email, very hard to read, I apologise, and we put some placeholder text in. So we've now created our form. We can dynamically preview it, so if we scroll back up to the preview page, you can see the checkbox, and then again, this is really bad on the projector, and you can see that it's appearing and disappearing. And the other key thing is this OK button, the form OK button, is becoming enabled and disabled as fields become valid or invalid. Now all of this is happening. I didn't write any code as I was declaring this page. I didn't have to write any JavaScript. I was able to do it all declaratively. And that's because the widgets themselves are publishing information about themselves, and they're subscribing to topics. So the form, for example, subscribes to a particular topic, which the form controls publish on to say whether or not they're valid or invalid, and it keeps track. If there's any form controls that are invalid, it says, well, I better disable the OK button because we don't want to be able to post invalid data. And similarly, we've declared that this text box needs to listen to the value of the checkbox so that it can show and hide itself. And this could apply to disablement rules or requirement rules, anything you like. Not anything you like, anything that we've configured in so far. But we can have the option, if we wanted to add in more dynamic behaviour, we could just add those into our base form control class, and all of the existing form controls will see the benefit. I'm going to go on about that quite a bit. So, developing pages. This is kind of, again, simplifying the page model. No more surf pages, no more templates, no more regions, no more components. You need a web script. Your web script only needs to really have a JavaScript controller. That's where you define your JSON model. The HTML template is really just a single line of boilerplate, and the descriptor only needs to have the URL that is going to map to that page. Although we can support multiple templates, and we have got a few out of the box. I'll try and call those out as you see them in the demo, but for sort of rendering the content in different ways. And you can also, as well as being able to reuse the widgets, you can reuse existing library files. For example, defining the header, the footer, and also if you wanted to build a document library, you can import a document library into your WebScript controller, and you can call the functions that it provides to build yourself a document library. So this is a very trivial example. Here's my WebScript controller. It defines a JSON model. I've got a stack of vertical widgets in which there is a logo. Not very earth-shattering, but this is the repeating pattern of widgets, config widgets. Everything defines a child. It's a tree structure. Very straightforward. And as you're developing pages, if you want to just focus on the UI and not worry about the back end, you don't necessarily want to go to all the trouble of writing a bunch of set of REST APIs that you don't know if they're quite right. So you might want to actually just work on a UI with a data model that's kind of a bit free-flowing. So we've come up with this concept of quads, which stands for quick and dirty data structures. And it's just purely for prototyping, and all of the data is stored in the data dictionary. So for each quads you get a folder, and for each item you get a CM content node, which just contains an abstract JSON content into which you can write literally anything. So as I said, so it's basically a data model entirely driven by the user interface. Not really suitable for production, but it's obviously pretty useful for prototyping. So the page creation tool allows you to create pages using drag and drop. Again, previous summit, watch the video, you'll see a lot more detail on that. You can do preview in line. You can save the JSON pages to the repository and then immediately render them back again without needing to restart anything. And what's new since last year is you can now export your WebScript files. So you can build up a page model. This only works in Chrome, I should say, because of some, this isn't a production thing anyway, this is a developer tool, but it's only supported in Chrome. But you can export your entire suite of WebScript files as a starting point, if you like, for building a page. It's a pretty good way of understanding how all widgets tie together. So here's an example of creating a to-do application in 3.5 minutes. So what we're going to have is we're dropping a dialog service in, because we're going to have a button that shows a dialog which you can enter your to-do, and we're going to save it to the repository. We're going to use the quad service as our data backend, and so that's our two services, if you like, which we require. We take a button, drop that onto the page, give it a label to say this is going to be add ourselves a new task for our to-do list. We pick a particular button type, this is going to be a dialog form, and then we can grab one of these pre-canned publications, in this case a dialog request, we can drop that straight onto the button. Then we define what our dialog is going to look like. It needs a title, so we're going to say add a new task. We can change what the confirmation button, i.e. what the button for posting, and we say we want to publish on the create quads item, because these are all pre-canned things the page creator knows about. So then within our form we need to have three things. We have three text boxes. First of all, we need to identify the quads that we're going to use. So this is going to be, we set the post parameter, which is quads. It's going to be to do, which is, we're going to see that reused a lot. And we actually want to hide this, so we set an initial visibility of false, so the user doesn't see it, but it's still going to be posted. Then we need a unique ID for each item in the to-do list. So we use this random value widget, the purpose of which is just to generate a UUID, and we set the property, which is the name, and then the last bit is the important bit, is the actual to-do that we want to add. So here we drop in another text box, and when you're using quads you basically say data dot something, so you need quads, name and data, and it sort of builds up a JSON structure. So you can use this dot notation to address anything in your data model. So we're using data.todo. We give it an actual label this time. What is it that you want to do? Do you know, it's weird. Every time I do this, I'm typing a demo. It doesn't matter if you make spelling mistakes, but for some reason you feel compelled to go back, and every time I watch it back I think, why did I do that? But anyway, so I'm laboriously entering a description for no good reason, removing the units. And also, because this is a required field, I'm going to tick the box to make it required, which will put that little star there and prevent the the form from being posted until the data is entered. So then I want to see all of the to-dos that I've already done. So I'm using this quads list, which extends an abstract list module. I can change the message that's displayed when there are no items. And here's the particular quads. I'm reusing that to-do quads, which I did before. And then this is my list that manages the state. I now want a view of that data, so I drop in an abstract view, and the view we need to define how each item in the list is represented. And so we want each item is going to be a row. We could have had like a grid or other structures. Each row has got 2 cells, one of which is going to be the to-do item, and another is going to contain a button to remove that to-do to say that we've done it. So we drop in a renderer, which is just a config property, and within that we will specify again the same value we did before, data.todo, which if you remember was what we were posting to. And then we grab our publish action and we drop this into the other cell. And in that we then say, right, we're going to select a particular topic. This topic is delete an existing quads item. Pick a predefined payload. Again, we enter the same quads. This is tying all the data together, and we add a delete icon, and then we save it. And that's it. We've built our to-do application. We can hit the preview button and scroll to the top where it appears, and then we've got, here's our list, nothing to do. Add a task. As we enter, the button becomes enabled, so the add button's there. Add milk gets saved to the repository. We can add another to do, stop papers, add that, and then we've got 2 tasks which are being rendered, and we can actually go and delete them as well, and there we go. That's our to-do application in 3.5 minutes without writing a line of code. Can I get a round of applause? Thank you. I apologise for talking so fast. Someone suggested to me that on Twitter that I should maybe take the recording and slow it down afterwards so people can follow exactly what I'm saying. Okay, so the WebScript export. As I said before, using the page creator we can now export the WebScript files. Currently Chrome only. If you do this, chances are you're probably still going to want to do some extra coding. The nice thing about defining these models in a WebScript is it allows you to put some extra logic into the JavaScript controller. Although, as you'll see, you can build a lot of the logic directly into the declarative model. So here's a very simple example, and I'm going to show another little cool function. So what we're going to do here is we're going to grab a horizontal layout widget, and in it we're going to put a couple of these little widget windows that I've called them. It's just something it's sort of kind of a throwaway widget that I created. But this is going to show how you can mix and match fixed and percentage widths in a single horizontal layout. So the first window is called My Window, and we set a size in pixels. So this window will always be 300 pixels wide. And then we're going to add another widget in, which is going to be a percentage. And this percentage is the percentage of remaining horizontal space after any fixed widgets have been, fixed widths widgets have been removed. So this is going to be 50% of the remaining space. So I can save this now and I'll preview it. And if you watch sort of closely up at the top, you'll see the first window. This window is not going to change its width at all, but you'll see that another window, its width is going to change as the window grows and shrinks. Which again, it's just just an example of things that we can very easily build in, which is a sort of non-trivial thing to achieve with pure CSS and even with JavaScript. So having given it a name, we can now hit the WebScript controller export, and you get 3 files: the descriptor, the HTML, and the JavaScript controller. And here's an example of the model that's been built. So it's again just a very simple way of, if you want to play with it and see how the models get created, you can just do that and just see what comes out. One of the things that we get, I want to run out of time. One of the things that we get asked a lot is about, can you build role-based pages? And the answer is very simply yes. So all the user information and group information is now readily available, and you can either reference that programmatically in the web script or declaratively within your JSON model. And we rely on this render filter attribute. And there's one of the blog posts I wrote last week describes this in more detail. And it's just what sort of and/or logic, i.e. render this widget if all of these things are true, or render this widget if one of these things are true. So this is kind of a very simple example. We're going to render this horizontal widget if all of these rules are true. If the current user is not, because we've got false in there, a member of the group, Alfresco search administrators, or if they're not a network admin, which is a cloud-specific thing. So that's a genuine example from something in our code. There we go. That's just pulling out the group's information. And it's the long group name, not the display name that we're referencing there. So here's an example. So we're going to share. We've got a couple of groups. You can't even read that at all. But basically, there's an Alfresco logo group and a Surf logo group. There's a user called Chris Griffin and the administrator in one, and a user called Peter Griffin and the administrator in the other. So those are the groups that we've all previously created. We go into our page creator, and we're going to build a page that has two logos in it. The first logo is going to be an Alfresco logo, and we're going to define a rule for it. And we're going to say this particular rule is called, I think it's just Alfresco. Logo rule, and we're going to say it wants to be a group membership rule. This is grabbing all of the groups that exist, and we're saying that it has to be true. This user has to be a member of that particular group in order for this logo to be displayed. Then we add another one. This is going to display the Surf logo, and we're going to set the same rule pretty much, except this time we're going to say the user has to be a member of the Surf logo group. So this is a very, very trivial example and not a realistic use case. But the point here is that these render filters apply to every widget. It's built into a core module which is written in one place, so we can, if we need to change the code or change the behavior, we can fix it all in a single location. So here we are. Here's our page. This time we're actually going to save it to the repository. So now we were logged in as the administrator. We're going to log out as the administrator and log back in as, I think I did Chris first, can't actually remember. Yeah, we logged in as Chris, put the password in, and we're going to go to the page which we've just literally created. So this is one of those examples of using a different template which embeds the header and footer. Chris can see he's a member of that group, so he sees the Alfresco logo. If we log in as Peter, you can guess what's going to happen. He's just going to see the Surf logo, and then we're going to log in as the administrator, and because he's a member of both groups, he's going to see both logos. So again, like I said, not a particularly realistic use case, but if you imagine you could apply this anywhere within a document list. You want to see certain columns, or within a page you want to give certain permissions, and we use this, like for example, in the search filter, you only get the search manager link if you are a member of the search administrators group. So this is something we're realistically using, and it is genuinely saying do not render the widget as opposed to not show it, so you can't inspect the DOM to sort of see hidden information. It's genuinely not on the page. So that's building pages, things you can do. There's more things you can do. I would love to have, I can talk all day about this, but I haven't got the time. So if you want to do a customization, we're using all the same extension mechanism we did since 4.0. We only really need to extend the JavaScript model. So basically, we provide a default JavaScript model, and then all the extensions get the opportunity to work with that model. They can either pull things out, reconfigure them, add new things in, etc. There's a couple of util helpers to help you find objects and to delete them from the array. We'd like to add in more helpers as we go forwards, and you've got the standard module evaluation which has been in since 4.0, so your module could be applied contextually, again based on group, user, site, whatever you choose. So here's some examples we've done. This was on blog posts. Here we've changed the admin drop down to be rather than just a link, to be a full list. This one we did a similar thing, so we expanded the site link to be show all the individual pages within a site. They were both on blog posts, so you can download the examples to try them out. Here's a real example from our cloud where we were basically adding in a new menu bar item for the My Tasks to appear. Other things we've done, we've embedded search forms. I think Kevin Dorr's got a session tomorrow. He's possibly going to be showing something along these lines. We've stuff for enabling context menus, adding new views, all sorts of things. So let's say you want to build an extension with this is kind of only gone in very quickly. So you've got this developer view mode. You can go in, you see all of the widgets on the page, you can download a jar which builds the extension structure that you actually want. So if you go into it, you can see you unpack this jar and you get in that everything you need for your extension. So you get like meta-inf for where you want to put your CSS and JavaScript. You get your Alfresco class structure, so the site data contains an extension XML file which has got all of the information for building your extension. And within the site web scripts, you get the actual JavaScript controller for the page you want to extend. And it's just got a comment in saying this is where you drop your code. You can go back to the widget that you want to work with, grab the pre-canned snippet of JavaScript code, drop that into which is going to grab the widget that you've just referenced on the page, assign it to a variable, and then you can reconfigure it. Now, this is something, like I said, I put this in like 4 hours secretly the other day without anyone knowing about it. So it's not, doesn't look the best. I'd like to put in more things like direct links to the JS doc, which is here, which we're using now to actually find all of the attributes that we can change. I'd also like to build in so you can see all the properties that the widget's currently configured with. But there you go, we've gone to the JS doc, we've grabbed an attribute that that defines. We're changing it from not having a source image to being a logo class. So using this surf logo. So what this extension module is going to do, it's going to just swap out the icon. Again, not a particularly exciting demo. It's purely just to show how easy it is now to use these features to build a customization. So we've made the changes to the files, so we're happy with that. We can just switch back out of the developer view and it all nicely comes back together. Lovely, lovely. And then we go back into our extension file, and then we recompress it as a jar file, just using all of the sort of defaults that we've been given. There's the jar file, and we can drop it into the webinf lib folder of our share application, restart share, and then our module will be applied because we set the automatically deploy section. So, like I said, this is something that's only sort of snuck in at the end, and it's something I think we'd like to improve on in future versions. But it does at least make it much more straightforward for building customizations. So there you go. So there's the application's restarted. Refresh the page, log in, and when it finally logs in, you'll see that there is a surf logo again. So that's again a customization with very little effort at all. So I'm kind of rapidly running out of time. There's not much in the way of documentation, but there is JS doc, which you can build from grunt scripts, which exist in the community source. I am hoping we can find somewhere to host those. They will at least define all of the attributes for every widget that exists, and the actual extra information sort of it varies depending on how much effort I've put into it. But before we release 5.0 Enterprise, I do intend to go through all of the widgets and try and improve the JS doc. And also, a chap called Ol, is Ol in the room? I don't believe it. I thought he'd come to my session. He wrote this great blog for what was in 4.2, which is well worth checking out. Things have moved on for 5.0, but worth checking out to read as well. So, and then also, as I said, I've started doing a lot more blogs, and I'll continue to do those, and hopefully our documentation team will catch up with us. Now, I have got like about 5 more sections, which I just have not got time to get through. So I'm just going to jump straight to the QA. But I will say that all of the extra content is in the slide deck, which you can download, as are some additional videos. But very quick, I'm going to race through this quickly. We have a unit testing framework. We use Grunt to do the building, and we have Vagrant stuff running in the background. We have a custom surf application hosted on Jetty, and we use Intern to run all our testing. And it's a very simple example. You bootstrap a test, you run some tests, you get coverage results, and we can get coverage results out of it. I could have gone into a lot more depth, but we are, just to show as an indication, all of our widgets are unit tested. This number is not high enough. We want to get to 100%. We want our widgets to be bulletproof, so that when you use them, you can use them with confidence. I'm going to ask Richard to set me up a Tech Talk Live, so I can go into a lot of this in more detail. And David Webster has promised to write a blog post all about the unit test framework. So hassle him on Twitter until he does that. I wasn't going to show you that. And I was going to go into a lot of debugging techniques, but you can step through the slide deck and there's some information about how you can debug Aikau. Again, an area in which we can improve. And again, it's just something we can continue to take forwards, but I haven't got time to go into all of this information. I apologise. You've got literally no time for Q&A, I don't think. How much time have we got, anyone? Is it? We still got a couple of minutes. If you have got questions, I'm sure you've got questions. And I haven't got time to answer them now. I will be around. I will try and hang out in the experts bar as much as possible. Please come and talk to me, or talk to David or Kev, who's loitering at the back of the room, and we will try and help you with any questions you have. I hope that at least has given you a good flavour of where we're taking this. So does anyone have any questions? Oh, cool, excellent. Right. I thought there was going to be loads. Thank you. Thank you very much.